Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 101 Great Goals, where we're delighted to be joined by Troy Townsend, who is the head of player engagement at Kick It Out, which is an organisation that aims to kick racism and discrimination out of football. Troy, it's an absolute pleasure for you to join us today. We're going to be talking through your career with Kick It Out, what Kick It Out does, and we'll maybe even talk about Andros Townsend at the end as well, who is your son. He's doing absolutely fantastic at Everton at the moment. But first of all, thank you so much for coming on. Why is Kick It Out so important at the moment? And what is the specific role that you do? And what do you think Kick It Out serves as a purpose to football as well?
God, you've gone in really tough straight away there. Listen, let me just end kind of some conversation that's normally had about the need for an organisation like Kick It Out. We've been in this industry environment now for 28 plus years, trying to fight the good fight around discrimination, trying to, make it a level playing field for people that from underrepresented groups, it must be said, to excel in the business, to not be victimized based on particular characteristics. But unfortunately, we are where we are. We're in 2021. And unfortunately, as many will know, discrimination still exists in society. And so it will exist in football. It's just the nature of what it is and where we are today. The importance and our relevance remains as important as what it was in 1993, because over periods of time, there'll be new people that come into football that want to support, that want to work, that want to become an important part of what football brings, who will unfortunately face discrimination. And yes, our focus in our original years was just around racism. So it was around supporting players in regards to the racial abuse that they'd received. There was many an outcry at that period of time, and players were obviously disappointed that nothing was being done. But we are just as important today. There's been the rise in social media, the online abuse that exists. Unfortunately, the stuff that still exists in our stadiums. And obviously for the last 18 months now or so, in regards to the rise of the conversation around Black Lives Matter, an important conversation that the players have brought to the table, by the way, the players in regards to their well-being on a football pitch, their mental space, and their well-being on social media as well. So that's the reasons why we exist today as much as what we did back in 1993. And that's why we remain as important today as I think as what we did back then as well.
Mm-hmm. One thing that you just mentioned, obviously, Kick It Out did start in 1993, like you said. Were you and many others who have been at Kick It Out for a long time now, are you as surprised that there is still that purpose for it, and there is still a long way to go in terms of societal discrimination and racism? Because as much as you said as well, people like to think we've come a long way since 1993. I still find it quite staggering that it's still at the height that it is today.
I've been here for 10 years now, George, and the situation that we are currently in, I don't like to compare periods of time, by the way, but the situation that we are currently in which many of us, I'll talk about race. So if I talk about racism, which is why the organization was formed originally by our former chair, Lord Herman Ouseley, it's as bad now as what it's ever been. But it's almost a different kind of bad, if I can explain that. When we talk about the likes of the Cyril Regises, the Laurie Cunninghams, the Brendan Batsons from West Bromwich Albion, the Clyde Bests, I could name players right the way through, to be totally honest. Their abuse was direct. Their abuse was at a time where you could hurl abuse and there was no consequences. Someone would say, I think I heard someone call Cyril Regis, whatever it may be, and there was no consequences at all to that action. So what we have done in campaigning in this space, and I use this very loosely because there's still times when there's not enough consequences, is brought consequences to people's actions who want to discriminate in a football ground. Why I'm not surprised in a space that where we are, if we take this outside of a football context, is because you've only got to look around you in society. You've only got to look around things that are happening on a daily basis where people are mistreated based on the color of their skin, based on the fact that they're a woman, based on, you know, they represent the LGBTQ community, all of those things. We have to realize the space that we're in is still a difficult and challenging one. So many people thought that discrimination didn't exist during a period of time, but it just formed itself in other ways. And I just think the reporting of it as well, the way that the media are also responsible for the way that they describe situations that happen, were responsible for many believing that it didn't happen in, I don't know, in a training pitch, in a stadium, or you know, in the newspapers. So we're in a space now where there are different challenges. We have come a long way. There always has to be that acknowledgement, because the education system, particularly in our country, in regards to football and how it learns about the acts of discrimination, is there. It's really important. But like I said, there's this new wave of people who only have hate in their mind, and we have to say that, who then need to be challenged all over again. So it's a revolving cycle almost, of having to deal with situations like this.
It's interesting that you talk about the media driving the narrative. I think as a young person who watches football regularly, the person who comes to the forefront of my mind, of course, is Raheem Sterling. The way that he was portrayed in the media and the stand that he's taken in recent years was. Are you proud of the fact that more players like Raheem Sterling, Marcus Rashford are coming forward and are taking the fight to the source of the aggression?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why there's been so much change over the short period of time that, you know, the players have been speaking out, to be honest. I always think it's difficult for players, by the way, so this is not against any player, but their voice has often been controlled internally. You know, don't say that. It'll have an impact on the football club. It will do nothing for your career. You know, we don't want to highlight situations like this. And I'm going to take you back to that period of time that you spoke about with Raheem Sterling, because there was a shift. There was a change. There was definitely a change. I'm not saying that change lasted forever, by the way, but there was a notification that Raheem had spoken out and spoken against the media, and people were listening. But I'm going to compare that to, I think it was 2 weeks before the Raheem Sterling situation. And I've spoken about this on many, many situations. There was a banana on a football pitch in the North London derby. You know, to any person of colour, a black person, you know the significance of someone throwing that banana on a football pitch and what they're trying to say to you. Remember John Barnes back in 1988, Goodison Park. The act of that banana being thrown on the pitch had reported in the media as a missile, not reported as an act of racism against Aubameyang, by the way, but actually against every black player that would have stepped on a football pitch because of the significance of that banana. That's how that conversation was controlled. That's how we didn't really go and tell the story in the manner that it should have been told. And I don't care about legal reasons and whatever else. That banana at a black person signifies someone being racist. 2 weeks later, you know, the situation at Stamford Bridge and Raheem Sterling, and, you know, his post the Sunday morning, wasn't it, afterwards, flagged up so many things to me. It flagged up the media do control this space if they really want to. They do control the narrative and the conversation. But there was no getting away with this because Raheem posted it on his own channels. So everyone saw it and everyone could reflect on it before the media even got control of it. And for me, although we knock social media quite a lot for what it presents, that is a platform now for players to express their opinions, and quite a significant moment, which many people will obviously date back to December 2018, I think it was, as the moment then actually they felt that there was change coming.
100%. I think so many people just had so much admiration for Raheem Sterling and what he did. What I can't work out, and I'm sure there's many people who can't work this out, is that why people have that in their brain to really speak that kind of hatred. What do you think needs to be done in terms of educating society as a whole? Because obviously it's not the majority of society, it's not everyone, but there's quite a big proportion of people who do have these ideologies and that thought process. So from a kick it out perspective, what do you think needs to change within education?
Well, to be fair, and I'll say this because I look, not because I deliver the education, so I'm not bigging myself up at all here, but I deliver education into the academy environment. So from 9s to 23s, part of my role is going in and having open conversations about racism and discrimination. The kind of conversations that, like I said, players would never had before. And it is a conversation. It's not me speaking at them. It's learning about experiences. It's understanding, mindsets, mentalities, what they've been through themselves, and bringing those to the fore, which also then educates young players who have never experienced anything, so they can hear their teammates talking about it and the impact. Parents talking to parents on kind of these issues as well, and the roles that they have to play. So we also do something that's called Fans for Diversity with FSA, the Football Supporters Association. And it is what it says on the tin. It's diversified, giving the diversity of football clubs' fan base an opportunity to feel loved, to feel wanted, to express themselves about their football clubs. And for me, those things need to be amplified so much more. They need to be spoken about. The re-education of fans. We have a fan education and engagement manager who, supports the re-education of fans, delivers that kind of education. I think a lot of industries could learn from football in that sense. I'm not saying football is perfect, not in any sense of the imagination, but in regards to delivering education, in regards to helping people that have offended understand the impact of the language they've used or the gestures they've made, helping fans really appreciate, other fans who may struggle to go to their local football team because they don't feel their identity fits. All that is a massive plus. And I don't think football tells good news stories really well, for fear, to be totally honest, for fear of being targeted, but sometimes we've got to be proud of the work that's been delivered. We're only a small organization. We're a charity organization. So our message reaches such a point and then maybe doesn't go any further. But I can sit here, and regardless of the flack that may be taken, and be really proud about how we are influencing society. Because remember, all these people come from society. It's a football problem, but it's a societal problem, isn't it? So I can sit here really proud of what we do, but knowing that we actually have to up the ante in regards to that work.
Just in terms of you mentioned that you've been in the role for 10 years and your job is to go into academies and speak to those players from around 12 years old. That would perfectly put into perspective the current younger generation of players that we've got now. Can you directly see the work that Kick It Out has done there? Because go back 10, 20 years ago, you wouldn't necessarily, to myself anyway, I don't think you would have seen many players come around a player that's been racially abused or a female player that's been that's had a sexist narrative driven towards her. But now we see whole teams walking off the pitch. We see a unison of players. And do you think that comes from a direct impact of probably not just Kick It Out, but the work that you're doing? And have you seen that change in players?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. 10 years ago, this education wasn't in the system. So, the change has been when I contact a player, because I've been notified that their situations happened, and a player says, I remember you from when I was in the academy. And that is because they remember the education that has been delivered and has utilized the kind of information to grow strength in speaking up and speaking out, or getting round a teammate, as you've said. I think for me, one of the most important things here, and I understand why we always utilize the players from the Premier League, by the way, it's a power in their voice. It's the massives that they interact with. It's front page, first on the news stories, isn't it? But there's players right up and down the system who I quite rightly feel proud of because of the stance that they've taken, because of the way that they have openly spoken about it and said, I'm not accepting it anymore. I come from a generation that doesn't have to accept being targeted based on a particular characteristic. I will speak up and hopefully will gain the support that I deserve. But if people don't want to support, I can't argue with that. I'm just going to continue to speak my truth. And I think the more we hear those stories and voices, the importance of them, but also the impact. I think one thing that not even football recognizes enough is the impact when you have been I'll focus on racism again. When you have been targeted based on the color of your skin, the impact. It's not a one incident, one stop kind of story. It plays with your psyche. It plays with your mental well-being. It sits in your mindset. It impacts your family. It impacts the people that are nearest and dearest to you. We need to respect that a little bit more, to be totally honest. And I say we, and I mean the collective of football needs to respect that a little bit more, because there is so much more work that could go on. You know, mental well-being is a thing that, again, it's one of those taboo topics again, isn't it, that wasn't really spoken about, because players, you know, you're not supposed to be weak. That was the kind of narrative that was attached to it. And I think we need to understand the mental space as well of players, and make sure that that support is provided just as much as the impact of dealing with situations or the sanctioning behind situations of discrimination.
It's been a landmark day in terms of for maybe the right, maybe the wrong reasons. It shouldn't be happening anyway. But West Brom fan Simon Silwood, he's been sentenced today to 8 weeks in prison for racially abusing Roman Sawyers online today. To my knowledge, that is the first prison sentence for online racial abuse. Is this a big step in terms of people are paying for what they've actually done, receiving consequences?
I think we've taken small steps in this space for a very long time. We've seen banning orders, we've seen community service, we've seen, you know, kind of suspended sentences, and we're all disappointed. When I first heard the news today, I was torn. I didn't know where to go. Is that appropriate sentencing? Is it enough? You know, and as I've gone through the course of the day, I've kind of thought to myself, you're absolutely right, by the way. This is the first custodial sentence in a situation like this. We have to start somewhere. You know, 8 weeks, which serving 4 weeks and another 4 weeks on license, apparently. It's an important step in this battle and challenge. You know, if he had got away today with a suspended sentence, there would have been absolute uproar. So there's times when we have to take small steps, and this is a significant small step in the right direction, but it's now the minimum that we will expect in a situation like this. So no longer now for the same act can suspended sentence be good enough. So a custodial sentence, which I imagine will be an embarrassment to the family, would mean that he's, you know, I think he's in prison already now. I wouldn't want to serve a day in prison, let alone a month. So we have to think about that as a consequence as well. The impact of his immediate circle of friends. And that's all I want to say about the individual, because I don't want them to have that kind of airtime. It's more about Romain Sawyers, you know, the people that he's thanked, the journey that he's been on, the supporter that were brave enough, and listen to what I'm saying here, the supporter that was brave enough to even report it in, you know, because they were in a West Bromwich Albion fan group, you know, on Facebook. You still have to be brave to report a situation like that, by the way. So all of that put together, for me, is more significant than anything else. But it is an, I'll say landmark. You say landmark. I'll say significant step in the right direction. Hopefully now, you know, the police forces and the judicial system can continue to work closer together, as well as us as organizations and football clubs, to hold anybody to account who feels that is acceptable to discriminate on a social media platform. And by the way, let's relate that also to when they discriminate in stadiums.
Just before we move on, do you think that the fans have got a huge role to play in that? Because it's almost a certain sense of someone saying it, and like you say, someone being brave enough to report it and act on it. And if someone hears that in the stadium, do you think the fans just have the biggest role to play in terms of A, not allowing that to be said in the stadium, and B, reporting it to the relevant authorities? And like you say, I know it's a big step for them to do that, but surely we can't accept it.
We're seeing it more and more, to be totally honest. And again, it's not stories that would be promoted as such, but we are seeing, you know, because when a person discriminates in that way, the people around them are the first people that will hear it. The players might not even hear it on the field of play. You're not sure where the stewards are. So the fans around them will be the first people to hear it. And I'm hearing these stories and being contacted by clubs in regards to these stories more and more and more. Our own fans reported an incident to us of their own fans. And I cannot kind of put a figure on how important that is. It's a difficult thing because, like I said, you may be in fear of the fans who are discriminating and you think, oh, I don't want to get involved in them. But the fact that fans now are taking ownership in this fight, you've got to remember, the large majority of fans go there to support their football team, go there to see a good game of football, go there to cheer goals, maybe even boo the opposition if they don't like them. But they're doing it all within the context of a football match. There is still this minority that seems to have this increasing volume of noise that will go there for other reasons. So, yes, of course, we must applaud the work that fans... We couldn't do this without fans. I don't think anyone could do this without the right fans. And football clubs will appreciate that as well. So, whilst we understand that there may be some very difficult situations that they're putting themselves into, you know, we'll look to support, we'll look to applaud, support, and help any fan that does and then faces kind of action against them because they have called it out as well.
In your opinion, what have you made of the FA's overall approach to discriminatory behaviour within football? We're going to move on to UEFA and FIFA a little bit further down the line, but what have you made more of the in-house FA approach to it all?
Oh, you've got me on that question. I think I'm always the critical one. I'm always the one that feels that football, our own FA and leagues could do much more. I always feel that doing just enough is not enough. You know, yeah, we can look at what happens outwardly. So the messaging, the hashtags, the videos, the statements, we could all, but I still feel that maybe the punishments in these areas are not significant enough to deter people. And even if it's player on player incidents, I still think there's a way to go. And I've said that in no matter what interview I've done. So I'm not saying anything that's slightly different to what I feel. It's important now that as we take the next steps on this journey, and this is a journey, it's a never ending journey, unfortunately, that we review what space we're in. You know, are we significantly on the way to eliminating and eradicating discrimination in all forms from our football grounds? We're not at the moment, you know, so there's always work to be done in this space. And for me, you know, if that was leveled at me, I'd accept that. I'll understand that. And I'll say that we're working towards making it a better space for no matter whose experience, the playing experience, the working experience, the fan experience. But one story is one story too many of a negative experience. So that absolutely there's still work to do.
You mentioned something before as well, which, you know, it resonated with me personally in terms of how you say that it sticks with that player. And I can only imagine how that must feel, because fortunately I'm never going to really go through that in this country. And I couldn't imagine that. When it happens even closer to home, not only are you protecting players, your own son, Andros Townsend, last year, a fan was guilty of racially abusing Andros Townsend. How did that feel personally to not only see footballers who you can relate to go through it, but your own son, who is a professional footballer, going through this? I couldn't imagine that.
It's a great question. You go through every single emotion. You know, the emotion of why, just why would someone feel that it's right to racially abuse him? I think Andros a little bit fortunate, and I use a fortunate in inverted commas, because he didn't hear the comment. So we have to kind of applaud the great work of a steward that did. But we were unaware at the time that the situation had developed. The only time I knew, to be totally honest, was when a reporter contacted me and said that the individual was in court today. Have I got a comment to make? And I went, I didn't even know. So I messaged Andros and he said the same thing. I wasn't aware. So we became aware. It's a very hard thing to explain. If someone hurts your child, you hurt anyway. So if your child bleeds, you bleed. If your child is sad, you're sad. And I say child, you know, Andros is an adult, but it doesn't stop those emotions. You want to protect them. You know, you want to be able to smother them. You want to be able to just show them that they're better than the individual, but ultimately he's an adult that can deal with his own situation. So you kind of lose some of that, but you absolutely feel the pain. And I honestly, I can't describe the pain of racism and the impact on it in any other way apart from the fact that you feel degraded. Simple. You feel someone's trying to take away your identity and abuse you because of your identity. It's visible. I'm a black man, visible, you know. So I'm not even sure I've got enough words to share in regards to its impact, to be honest, George, because it's more than anything that anyone will ever understand. And anyone that's gone through this as a family member will also appreciate that it's one of the toughest days, continually toughest days of your lives, because you'll always remember it. You'll always remember it.
It's disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Something that was highlighted, of course, over the last few years is players taking the knee. Other players have chosen not to in recent weeks, but we'll get onto that. Why do you think there was a very vocal section of society and football fans that were so opposed to players taking this knee? And there was even calls from members of the government that were opposed to players taking the knee. I mean, from my point of view, I couldn't believe it. I mean, from Kick It Out's point of view, it must have been insane to be seeing what was going on.
Because they didn't understand, and they don't want to understand. It's very easy to be critical from afar when you've not even done any research, when you've not even tried to understand why the players, again, have effectively come together and decided that this is the appropriate action to take because, and I'll just say this, they were fed up. Yes, it was highlighted, obviously, because of the murder of George Floyd, but the Premier League captains got together, put together the Players Together group that obviously helped the NHS at the period of time, and then felt that they wanted to deal with this cause because it was the most significant cause on many a player's mind. When you speak about the government in this certain scenario, I got no time for their conversation. The same government that was disrespecting the players for taking the knee during the summer was the same government when the England lads were doing it, you know, in the friendlies and then throughout the Euros, were the same government that made sure they got their England shirt and put them on when England reached the semi-finals, a quite significant moment, and then the final. And I'm sure they weren't criticising then as the players were taking the knee in both those occasions. This is not a conversation for government because they have never understood this. And we've got people in government actually that have fueled the fire in this space, which doesn't help, by the way. But many who have decided that this action that the players have decided to take is more for their conversation. And I think to myself, you don't even understand for 1 minute what the players are trying to do and what they are trying to achieve because you've never experienced what the players have experienced. And yet they'll say it's Marxist. I don't know what Marxist means. They've never looked it up before. They'll say that it relates to the murder of a black man who was a criminal. And again, it's through lack of knowledge and understanding. And people say, well, you've got to educate these people. But then I also say that some people don't want to be educated because they have their own views and opinions and values, and they'll stick to that regardless, no matter what. So I'm happy with any player that wants to take the knee. And I'm also happy if a player wants to use his own platform or his own way to decide that he shows his support. It's not about the players and what way they do it. It's about the message that they're trying to send. And this message is around equality. It's around togetherness. And it's absolutely talking back inwardly to football to say, we want something done in this space because we've had enough. It's as simple and as clear as that. And if you don't understand that, the problem remains with you, not you, George, but with you more than anything else.
100%, 100%. You know, it's not just a problem in English football, which we will speak about as well. Seems to be a problem. Well, it is a problem worldwide. And we've seen that at club and international level. We'll talk about Hungary. Hungary, of course, have just received a one-match ban for their racial abuse of English players again, Raheem Sterling again, when they played last month. A one-match ban, while they're already serving another match ban from UEFA, clearly doesn't seem to be too much of a deterrent for that particular fan base. What were your thoughts on that?
Here we go again. This fan base that this fan base went through the Euros and racially abused French players, had a particular take on homophobia and their lack of acceptance, and were allowed to host football matches. First and foremost, they have a reputation. They were allowed to host Euro 2020 matches first and foremost. So the obvious happened, and they were given a punishment, with some of that punishment suspended. And then you're told that those fans, after receiving that punishment from UEFA, can still enter the ground against England because it's a different competition that is now owned and run by FIFA. So first and foremost, there's your problem. The two governing bodies of world football, from a world stage and from a European stage, cannot get their ducks in line to say, actually, we should be taking on board the punishment that you've kind of sanctioned, and we will not allow those fans in our stadium. So the Hungarian game v England was an accident waiting to happen, wasn't it? It was a red list game. It was a high profile game. It was made high profile by UEFA, by FIFA, by FAIR, who work in European football, very similar to what we do here in England. And you kind of were just, it's one of those situations again, like Rashford, Sancho, Saka, as they were taking the penalties in the final. You knew it was going to happen in Hungary. So when it did happen, when the first report started to filter through, there's no shock. There's no shock. Here we go again. There's no shock. Then the anticipation, is the game finishes and right, can't wait for the sanction, because surely now FIFA are going to use what happened in the Euros and say enough is enough. So when that sanctioning comes through, I'll be honest, George, you're deflated. You're deflated. It's hard to really comment on it because you've commented on Montenegro, you've commented on Bulgaria, you've commented on booing of knees. It's hard to continue to comment, because what you then find is that the value of your comment means absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So the amount of organizations that spoke out about FIFA, the amount of organizations and individuals that would have said, this is the moment we're waiting for now. Show zero tolerance. Show zero tolerance. Until the hierarchy changed, there'll be no change. They obviously don't understand it. They obviously don't get it. They obviously feel that they don't want to provide expulsions as an alternative, or deduction of points as an alternative. That's a problem. That's an issue in our country, by the way, as well. But you've asked me specifically about FIFA and UEFA. So what is next? Their statement says zero tolerance. They put racism, in the list of things that they were charging Hungary for. And I said this previously. The list of things that they're charging Hungary for also included no room in stairwells, also included pyrotechnics. So at what point is the significance of racism the most important thing that you need to deal with? Or are you just going to bunch it up with all the other things that Hungary got wrong on that night, the Hungarian Federation got wrong on that night, and then just fine? So I don't know how much the fine is for racism, to be totally honest. I don't know. But in their statement, they again put, we take a zero tolerance approach. And right about now, the rest of the industry just goes, it's a joke. Full stop.
Where, just before we move on then to Andros, where would you like to see things go in terms of changing it at the top, in terms of FIFA, in terms of UEFA, in terms of the FA? It's hard to say in a perfect world, but in your view and within Kick It Out, what would you like to see changed?
top organizations need to be more reflective of the people they serve. As simple as that. There's no more conversation. How do FIFA and UEFA come to a decision when on their committee there's no one like me? So if you're dealing with racism, who are you going to for advice? Or is it standard practice because your sanctioning policy says the maximum you can give them is stadium closure for an amount of games and suspend some of those as well? So basically the policies need to be looked at. And if the policies are not right for 2021 going into 2022, then let's rewrite them. It should never be rocket science. Let's rewrite them. Let's now, have a staggered approach. First offense, second offense, continuing offenses, whatever they may be. And then it doesn't matter who's at the top, does it? Because they'll be going, right, okay, yeah, we've got that now. That's how we'll deal with them. And if that doesn't happen, then it has to be the reflective change that I've spoken about in regards to making sure that your boards are more diverse. They understand the impact of discrimination in all its formats, and I'm not sure that they do. They understand the impact of homophobic abuse. They understand the impact of racist abuse. They talk about access for people of disability. This is not just about racism. There's a whole conundrum of things that I don't think we're getting right. And the thing is, the leaders in those groups, the people that will be able to talk to you more on homophobic abuse and abuse in regards and access in regards to the disability community, they're the ones that will tell you. I'm not even sure if I've said that right. I said disability community, so scratch that. That's not right. But even in regards to sexism, so there is so much more that we need to learn, that people at the highest level of the game need to learn. And I think to have a diverse board as such helps you then reflect on those things better. They bring a different conversation to the table. They'll know when to challenge around the conversation. And it's definitely not reflective in the sanctioning policies that are available to those people as they stand.
Troy, just before we move on, I want to just thank you for coming on, and a truly eye-opening discussion. If there's anyone watching that wants to research a little bit more about what Kick It Out do, I'll leave all the links to them in the description. So we all need to do so much more just to eradicate these problems. It baffles me that we're having this conversation, but anything that we can do is better than nothing. Troy, on a lighter note, Andros Townsend, he's been
I'm smiling
insane
now, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. He's been insane for Everton. I mean, a lot of question marks going in with the transfer, but he seems to be proving them all wrong, and he's back to his best form.
Do you know, first and foremost, it's because of the stuff that we've spoken about so far, this is the things that have kept me going so far this season. A very, very difficult start to the season. I had no doubts that he would prove the people wrong, the descending voices, free transfer, his age, not good enough for this football club. There were descending voices. Most of those probably are social media voices, but every football club that believes they should be in the top half of the table and battling for Europe believes that they should be spending significant money to do that, by the way. Everton have spent significant money in the past and couldn't do it no more, not for now anyway. So balancing of the books was one of the objectives when Rafa came in. Andros worked with Rafa for about 3 months anyway. In the short space of time he worked with him at Newcastle, again, I could see a significant improvement in the dynamics of his game. So a manager that goes into the real detail to draw out the most he can get out of you. What you're seeing is an extension of that. What you're seeing is him allowing to play in the last third a lot more than maybe he was used to under Roy Hodgson. And that's not being disrespectful to Roy, by the way. He had a setup and a way that he wanted to play. A freedom to create, a freedom to be himself. And Rafa's, what I've seen, and obviously speaking to Andros, he's instilled that confidence again. He's instilled that you deserve to be here. You have a right to be here. And I think what he's doing is proving to the fans that he has a right to be there as well. I've got to be honest, in the first game that he played at home to Southampton, I didn't hear those dissenting voices. So like I said, there's a social media fan base, and then there's those that go to the games fan base, you know, and just to hear the fans very, very quickly sing his name. Those are emotional moments. Those are moments that you record it, you remember it, you want to play it back. The goal against Burnley, which obviously has now been nominated for one of the goals of the month, is his trademark. It's one of the things that when he's playing well, he'll do it without fear that it may go over the bar or such. He caught that one so sweet. But this may sound strange. I'm liking the goals in the 6-yard box. You know, he has often seen the 6-yard box like, I don't know, like it's something that he should never dare step into. But he scored against, you know, all right, these goals have come in the Carabao Cup that they're no longer in, but he scored against QPR in the last game. A little poacher's goal, you know, out of corner, he's on top of the keeper. So what's he doing there? But he bounced, he responded, and he picked up the loose pieces. And a lovely goal in against Huddersfield as well, where his movement and his intelligence was good. He's an intelligent footballer. I don't think he's used his intelligence in the sense that the way Rafa's getting it out of him, and the team is obviously benefiting from it. So, you know, it's been a really good opening period of time, but everyone will point to consistency and making sure that you continue to do that, which I will as well. But it's been amazing to see so far, for sure.
Well, perfect, Troy. I really want to just say thank you so much for coming on today, taking time out of what was supposed to be a day off as well, and for coming on and speaking to us. And I just hope that everyone has listened to what you've had to say today and has just taken it on board. If nothing else, just research into what Troy has been saying, and let's all just try to do better. So, Troy, thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
It's been unbelievable to speak to you. If you are new around here, please subscribe to the channel. Check out our social media pages as well. And until next time, we'll see you next time.